Just within his last performance, WBO welterweight champion Terrence "Bud" Crawford has finally delivered the type of performance that many questioned if he were capable of delivering. His November 20th matchup against Showtime Shawn Porter saw him in the type of fight against a top-tier welterweight, which many had questioned he had not faced yet, in a performance is a telltale sign of where his career is currently. Crawford sought out the top fighters at the division, but many were not interested in taking him on for various reasons. And the thing about it is, Bud has always been a more than capable fighter. But you just have to understand, boxing requires what have you done for me lately? And he was able to put that on display when he faced Showtime Shawn Porter. Win, lose, or draw, this was a message match for Bud Crawford and a measuring of where he stood for Shawn Porter. Now that we have the verdict, now that things have rolled in, let's talk about what may be next for Bud Crawford as we look back upon this great fight. What's good, YouTube? It's Stormy B-Man, and I am back with a video with my final thoughts on the fight that just took place this past Saturday, November 20th, between Showtime Shawn Porter and Terrence "Bud" Crawford for Crawford's WBO welterweight title. It's been a while getting to this point where we could finally see Crawford in with one of the fighters who were considered at the top of the division on the PBC side of promotions. Though Showtime Shawn Porter is saying now that he is officially retired after this fight, Porter has nothing to hang his head about, because he performed admirably, even though the consensus was he may not necessarily come out victorious in this fight, but it had to happen. This type of match had to take place. We had to find out exactly how good Terrence Crawford is, and if Porter were definitely the type of fighter who could test him, who could take him to that level that many foresaw him not being at. Not myself, of course. I always felt Terrence was an elite fighter. He showed me that many years ago when he won his first world title. But Shawn Porter, who just 2 fights ago had a tremendous matchup when he defended his WBC title against Earl Spence Jr. in a unification match. That match right there saw both men coming together to see who were the best with those titles between them. And when that fight ended, I had remarked that that fight was worthy of a rematch. Such is the business of boxing today. Porter, who now has a record of 31-4 with one draw, is the type of fighter that can apply a lot of pressure on his opponent and put them in a situation where they may question if this is what they really want to do. He's highly energetic, and he has a pressuring style that can wear people down, both physically and mentally. But that was not to be the case against Bud Crawford. Bud Crawford is the type of fighter who relishes the opportunity to be in there with someone who can challenge, who can take him to another level. And the interesting factor about these two, when they came together finally, is that they were friends, or are friends, and have been since they were teens. In a wonderful breakdown of these fighters' careers leading into this fight, the series Blood, Sweat, and Tears really profiled these men and what went on behind the scenes through their careers as they found themselves on this collision course. For Bud Crawford, he had always been on the odd side of things, where people really questioned him because he was a young man who was hot-headed, but very talented at the same time, and somewhat stubborn. Typically, all the qualities that fall under someone who is either extremely talented or someone who's extremely crazy and off their rocker. Bud might be a little bit of both. He has had tremendous success in his career. A former 2-division champion, now 3-division champion, Crawford has beaten the best that has been placed in front of him. When he won the undisputed title from Julius Indongo and became undisputed at 140 pounds, he said that in his next move, he wanted to move up to the welterweight division and take on the best guys that were there. At that time, you had the likes of Keith Thurman, who was a unified champion, and Danny Garcia, and you had Porter and Earl Spence, who was hot on the heels of everyone. The fact that Bud stated he wanted to face everyone didn't go over my head. But a lot of people, as I stated earlier in this video, are about what have you done for me lately. So even though he had the opportunity to step up to welterweight, no one was willing to really get in the ring with him right away. People were not foolish. They knew he had skills. They just wanted to see him in there with someone else first. And that's understandable. It's actually respect. But when boxing fans begin to take on their own theory of things, and the fighters do not discredit that or shoot those theories down, it becomes fact for some reason or another. Bud Crawford had the chance to take on Jeff Horn, who had been granted a decision over Manny Pacquiao, and he fought him in June of 2018, stopping him in the 9th round. This was the beginning of his hunt toward welterweight supremacy. And when he took on Jeff Horn, a lot of people had said that they felt that Horn would be a little bit too physical for Bud. And so therefore, the notion of was he strong enough at welterweight began to come up as a question. For Bud, he didn't feel that Horn was going to be too strong. He didn't feel that anything could stop him from becoming champion as long as he got the fights. But then the politics began, and he wasn't given an opportunity against any other fighters that were with the PBC banter because most of the champions were on that side. All he wanted to do was fight. Showtime Shawn Porter should be credited for having one of the single best resumes in the sport of boxing, not just for the welterweights, but in all of boxing. But as I said, Porter, who has fought the likes of Spence, Yordenis Ugas, Danny Garcia, Andre Berto, Keith Thurman, Adrian Broner, Kell Brook, Paulie Malignaggi, Devin Alexander, and we can go on. But these are fights that you saw Showtime Shawn Porter deliver everything he brings on a night in and night out basis. No straight up and down, no special effects. But when Bud got in there finally with Porter, his good friend, I noticed something about the performance. His record now stands 38-0 and 29 KOs. I felt like Bud was having difficulty fighting Shawn Porter because of their relationship on a personal level. And that's nothing to sneeze at, but it's also something that said that maybe he was holding back. Maybe he just couldn't bring himself to beat up on his old pal. Also, Shawn Porter did nothing during the promotion of the fight to rile Bud up, to get under his hat, to start making him feel like they were enemies. Smart move by Porter, because the fight turned out to be a competitive fight against two men who were familiar with one another, and just their skills in the ring showing what's happening between the two. As Bud Crawford saw Shawn try to be strong and come on physically and aggressively, Bud was able to show him he's every bit as strong at the weight. There were a few moments where he was pushing Shawn backwards. He actually lifted him off the canvas, showing little or no regard for Shawn's personal physical strength and his size. Bud was able to stick the jab successfully, but he didn't continue it in the early rounds. It was almost like he was taking it easy on Shawn, but I wouldn't go as far as to say that, but that could have been the appearance. It seemed to be like he needed something to kickstart him. There was a moment in the fight where Shawn, being very aggressive, tried to bull rush and charge into Crawford, and he just seemingly cupped him behind the head and put him into the ring apron with one hand, showing a physical strength that a lot of people didn't realize that Crawford had. This was impressive to me because I know one thing about being in the ring is that when fighters are physically strong and capable, there are subtle things that they can do to an opponent to show this strength. And I believe that once Shawn realized that he was in there with another true welterweight, just like when he was in there with Errol Spence, he wasn't going to be able to do things that he thought he was coming in with a game plan to execute. Still a highly competitive match. We noticed that Shawn took early rounds. I had the fight by the 8th round. I had the fight 4 rounds apiece, which it could have been even more for Shawn. But the thing about it was, I was wondering when was Bud going to step it up. We got our answer in round 9, where Bud began to land shots on Shawn in combination and began to show the type of resiliency that he does often in fights. Having gathered enough data now, he was able to get in there and start doing some things that Shawn didn't know he was going to come up with. In other words, he made the adjustments. Between round 9 and 10, while sitting on his stool, someone mentioned to Bud that he might be behind, that they may have, someone mentioned that Shawn may be out front. And he was like, really? You know, he was like, okay. He got up, and when the bell rang for the 10th round, Bud was able to go out, and within moments of the start of the 10th, he backed Shawn up like he hadn't done all fight, engaged him, and for the first time in the fight, Bud put Shawn on the canvas. This was an impressive moment because at no other time in the fight had Bud shown this type of intensity. And he didn't do it with a furiousness as of when he attacked Egis Kavaliauskas when Kavaliauskas had got the flash knockdown against him. He just went out there with dutiful purpose, hunted Shawn down, and put him on the canvas. It was a left uppercut to the chest, chin that saw Shawn on the seat of his pants. And he had a stunned look on his face because it seemingly came out of nowhere. At that moment, the fight had changed, and at that moment, you can pretty much indicate the fight was over. Because once Shawn got up from that first knockdown, Bud went to work on him. And the next thing you know, Shawn was on the canvas again for a second time. And it was at this point, you can pretty much tell it's over. When Shawn went to the canvas the second time, he banged the canvas with his glove in frustration. And when he rose for the count, he stumbled somewhat, but his father, Kenny, was already up on the ring apron, waving the fight off, asking the ref to stop the fight. I took this as Kenny not wanting to see Shawn get devastated like a lot of Bud Crawford's opponents had in the past. Bud is one of the best finishers in the sport of boxing. He's the kind of fighter that once he gets a guy hurt, it's like he smells blood in the water and he goes after the opponent with relentless abandon. And that's what the boxing fan really loves about the sport. When they see guys who can finish, go about their work, it's like the crowd is bloodthirsty as well. And these are the things that we saw in this fight. And imagine, Bud did this without being angry, without being purposeful and trying to hurt the other guy. He just took it to another level. It's as simple as that. And again, as I indicated earlier, there's no reason for Showtime to hang his head. This man has been in with a virtual who's who. He's had all type of experience and had never really been hurt. But on this night, against his friend, he was hurt, people. And kudos to Kenny Porter, who recognized who his son was in against. And knowing that Crawford is such a deadly finisher, didn't feel like he wanted to see that of his son. He didn't want the public to see that of his son. And he saved his son for life after boxing. In the days since, people have stated this seemed shady by Kenny and Shawn, especially with Shawn mentioning after the fight that he's going to retire now, and Kenny mentioning after the fight that Shawn didn't train as he had liked him to do. I think all of this has a great deal to do with the fact that Crawford's talent level, and that Kenny knew that his son didn't necessarily have everything he would need to deal with Crawford. And that was the approach that they had, where they didn't want to challenge him and talk to him dirty or say some, inappropriate things as the fight was getting ready. It's like they wanted to make sure that they didn't rile Bud Crawford up. But Bud was very reserved. He shook hands. Even at the press conference when he said, prior to the fight, when he said, "We're not friends until after the fight." Well, Bud still showed a lot of respect to Shawn and a lot of love as well, and to his dad. That showed that Bud had grown up as a man. And the young man that Porter was concerned with showing up for this fight never appeared. Bud Crawford is a man now. He's 34 years old, and he's not the young man that tried to stare down Kenny in the alley when he was 16 years old. Impressive. Yes, this was the type of fight that a lot of people didn't think that Crawford was capable of delivering. but he did. And he showed us all why he should be regarded as the best pound for pound fighter in the sport. Because even without having venom for an opponent, to still do this in the later portions of a fight. Let's not forget this was the 10th round. Bud carries his power, and I said this before, from bell to bell. When he fought Jose Benavidez, he stopped him in the 12th round. The man has grown into a welterweight. He is definitely a specimen at welterweight, and people need to respect that. Yes, there's another fighter out there by the name of Errol Spence Jr., and there's a huge following for Earl. But don't disregard this man just because you have love for another. They're both exciting fighters, and if they ever got in the ring to compete against one another, it would be the fight to see of the year. But let me tell you, people, for those who have had disregard for Bud Crawford all this time, you're going to one day look back upon this man's career and think of him fondly because of what he was able to do. You might not have him right now, but there will come a day when that respect will be there. And it'll probably be long after he's entered the Hall of Fame. And I believe he's going to be a first balloter. This is all that I have to say about this fight as I have recapped it. It's been a tremendous ride watching Bud Crawford do his thing. And to see him in the ring celebrating with his mom and his sisters, his family, after his victory, it was something else. I wish that every fighter who was a world champion could do this and show that type of love and fun. And he still had respect for Sean and Kenny. This was not dancing in their face. They were just celebrating being victorious and having a pay-per-view outing, and Bud, again, representing in the most positive of manners. I love this, and I hope that we can keep it going. I hope that that type of spirit can continue in the sport. It's great stuff. This is Stormy B Man. Those are my thoughts. Shout out to the LDBC, the Lions Den boxing community, and Liberated Perspective, the third eye view of the world. For more content such as this, please like, comment, subscribe, and share. Leave comments, let me know what your thoughts are, and we can discuss it. But it's onward and upward for Bud Crawford. Who knows, maybe sometime next year, he and Spence can get it on for total supremacy in the welterweight division. It'll be an exciting time, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get to see Terrence dancing with his mom again. Peace to everyone out there, and everyone please remain safe.